Hey YouTube, I'm back. Now, I promised you something in regards to the contracts that sit underneath your management rights contract. So, I've got the slide. So, do you remember how we talked about the management rights and the community management statement, and how your other, which are usually your letting, your caretaking, and the management terms in regards to on-site residency sit under that whole umbrella. Now, something that I wasn't aware of, who the old president of our committee, who was the president when body corporate lawyers were hired to try and terminate a management contract due to the very poor performance of one particular on-site manager. And they weren't told that the contracts underneath the umbrella all have their own terms and conditions. What they were told is the management rights contract is untouchable. However, because it's particularly the caretaking that I'm upset with, he can manage the rights for 25 years and the letting for 25 years for all I care. I just don't want him doing the caretaking anymore because it's too expensive for what I'm getting. Well, I'm not getting what I'm paying for, you know? So I went through the entire caretaker's contract and I found a clause where the body corporate for my complex, if all voted by the lot owners, can actually terminate the caretaking agreement that sits underneath that umbrella. Not many people understand that. I didn't understand that. The previous committee didn't understand that. I imagine this committee doesn't understand that. I've certainly written to them to explain that and to explain the financial savings that we can all achieve if we were to get together and revoke that management agreement and get an independent contractor in. We certainly wouldn't each be paying $200 a month for an independent contractor, I can assure you. So my suggestion to you is to go to your body corporate company's website and log into your owner portal and have a look. All of the agreements should be there for you to look at. If they aren't, then you can ring the company and they will send it to you, or they may have an avenue to request the document and go through the terms and conditions, whether it be the letting agreement or the caretaking agreement or whatever it is that's going on in your complex. Have a look and see where all these contracts sit. And if you've got these separate contracts under your umbrella, you may have recourse that you didn't realise that you've got. So I think that's a really powerful piece of information that everybody should have. And quite frankly, that the body corporate company, management company, would already know. And they just haven't told anyone in the complex that. Probably because it's far more administration for them if we get an independent contractor. So it's just not on when they're charged at being the experts to guide us through the legislation. It's just not good enough. Now, as I have said to you in previous videos, and I realise I'm probably just ranting to myself most of the time, but I'm going to keep doing it because if somebody gets some information out of this that helps them in their complex, and you can pass it on to someone else or to your committee, and we all start to get educated about this, we're all aware of the proposed changes that have been tabled in the Parliament by the Department of Justice, we can all start to fight. But we don't know this. Nobody's giving us this information. So I'm trying to be the lone voice to disseminate. So again, this is about sharing the information. But just to keep you up to date, I did a bit of an emailing campaign, as I said to you a little while ago, and I've got 2 responses. So I've got a response from the Premier of Queensland, who is also the Minister for Trade. But it's not from her, of course. It's from her office. And she thanks me for my email regarding body corporate reform, and that this person, Mr. Peter Nibbs, who is a Director of Policy, has been asked to reply. And what he has said to me is that it's just basically not the Premier's responsibility. it is the responsibility of Yvette Diath MP, who is the Attorney General and the Minister for Justice, and they have taken the liberty of forwarding my email to her. So the Premier's office doesn't want to know, even though it's mentioned in the housing strategy on the Premier's website. Doesn't say in there that there's any whatever, And to me, every minister has a portfolio or whatever, but aren't you the Premier? Aren't you in charge of all the ministers? Aren't you the boss? Don't you know what's going on in the different departments? That's what a boss usually does. Anyway, I've got another office here, another reply, and this one is from the Office of the Lord Mayor. Now, why did I write to the Lord Mayor? Because the Lord Mayor put into my letterbox a glossy pamphlet telling me how much he loved me and did I want to make any suggestions to him about Brisbane and housing affordability and a number of different issues. But because he raised housing affordability, I wrote to him about this body corporate situation and pointed out that it's about housing affordability for those of us that live and own and live within the complexes. But let's also talk about the rental market, because if investors are trying to make their money back or pay the mortgage on their investment property, they have to cover the costs of the property. And if the property costs are insanely ridiculous, like the ones are at our complex, then the rents are higher. Otherwise, the investors aren't covering the debt or aren't making any profit once the debt's paid off. So if we can eliminate these ridiculous laws and bring the costs down for the owners, then we bring the costs down for the renters as well. It's a flow-on effect. It's simple. And you, again, have referred me off, Mr. Lord Mayor, after asking for my opinion about housing affordability and did I have any views or ideas or anything I'd like to contribute. You've basically told me what I already knew, which is when you issued the approval for the complex, and you've told me that Yvette Diath, again, you've referred me off to her, but you've also say here that you note I've written to a lot of elected officials about the same subject. Yes, I have, for the same reason that I wrote to you. Every local politician in the last 2 weeks have been sticking glossy brochures into my letterbox and asking me to contribute to the conversation, and then one of the topics on every single flyer was housing affordability. You asked for my opinion, and now you're telling me that it's not your jurisdiction or it's not your problem. Don't put your glossy crap in my letterbox and ask me for my opinion, Councillor, Mr. Lord Mayor, whoever, if you don't want my opinion or if you're just going to ping me off to somebody else. Because, honestly, that's what's wrong with the government. That's what's wrong with Centrelink. That's what's wrong with any government agency you have. Not my job, not my department. Hamble. How can we help you? Oh, we don't want to help you because that's not our department. And I'm done. Sad to say, but I'm going to quote Pauline Hanson and say I am sick of tired of politicians who do nothing. You asked for my opinion and now you've sent me off to talk to somebody else. You didn't care. You just wanted your pretty brochure with all your pretty pictures of all the nice community things you've been doing to get in my face. You didn't really want my opinion. So stop sending out your propaganda. We're not interested in it. Start giving us actual results. Because at the moment, nothing's actually happening except for a lot of Queensland money being spent on a lot of development that sits empty. A lot of it. It's ridiculous. Don't even start me. It's ridiculous. You don't even have to spend money to fix this problem. You only have to change the legislation. You don't have to build anything. You don't have to hire anybody. I'm annoyed because you asked me for my opinion and you didn't really want it at all. So, Lord Mayor, Seriously, or your aide or your office or whoever replied to me, thank you for asking me for my opinion. And I'm glad to see how important my opinion is to you. Ripped off and pissed off. I'm signing off now. I'm upset. Peace, people.